Our American Promise movement is uniting the best of this new generation and with the best of tested experience for the success of all. Greg Behrman and his company, NationSwell, exemplify this kind of approach. Greg is the author of books on the AIDS epidemic and the extraordinary American rescue of Europe with the Marshall Plan after World War II. His commitment to service brought him to the Carr Center for Human Rights in the State Department and a military deployment to Afghanistan, where he was the strategic advisor to General David Petraeus and General John Allen. When Greg returned from Afghanistan, he launched a new company, a benefit corporation called NationSwell. NationSwell connects and supports America's leading problem solvers to advance solutions that make our communities and the nation stronger. Greg's here now to share his perspective and then lead a conversation with some of our nation's leading problem solvers. And I'm going to tell you who they are now because they're going to move straight into that after he speaks a bit. Leslie Danks Burke, founder of Trailblazers PAC, which supports local level candidates of any party so long as they back honest government. Cheryl Crawford, the executive director of Mass Vote, which political participation in historically disenfranchised communities. Cheryl also serves on the boards of NAACP in Boston and American Promise. Matt Cox, a former U.S. Navy officer who led a crew on a submarine, returned to business in North Carolina and decided to run for the state Senate to take on corruption and reform our politics. Matt was one of the first candidates this year to sign the American Promise Pledge for the 28th Amendment. Finally, Greg will be joined by Wambui Gatheru, outreach manager of American Promise, whom you have met. I think maybe everybody's met her. She's my personal hero at American Promise, under a certain age, Jeff. All right, so welcome them all to the stage.
By a show of hands, how many people here have seen the film An Officer and a Gentleman?
Oh.
So I was a former naval officer, and Deborah Winger has been making us look cool for a couple of decades now. So thanks for that, Deborah, and thanks for the introduction. It's so good to be with everybody. As Deborah mentioned, about 6.5 years ago, after returning from a military deployment, I founded NationSwell. And one of our founding beliefs is that if you shift the lens from the noise, the negativity, the one side screaming at the other side that pervades our environment and what we consume from media so much, if you shift that lens, you can notice something extraordinary and hopeful, which is that so many of the solutions to our greatest national challenges are out there, are in operation, having an impact in communities, cities, and states around our country. So we're an organization, a public benefit company, as Deborah mentioned, in service of America's leading problem solvers, the folks who are sort of not wringing their hands, but are rolling up their sleeves and working to advance the most creative and effective solutions to our country's greatest challenges. We do that through storytelling. We do it through a membership community of incredible service-minded leaders, more than 1,000 people across sectors around the country. We work to connect those people with each other and provide them with the supports they need to accelerate their work and drive positive outcomes. We do it through a creative studio where we do things like strategy and more storytelling and social impact campaigns and branding to accelerate solutions for like-minded organizations. And it was through that work at NationSwell and the council in particular that I met Jeff, an American Promise. And if you do that, I found him irresistible. I don't know if it was the smile or the idea or whatever it was, but I too couldn't resist his charms. And I couldn't resist how inspiring the vision was and how necessary it obviously is as well. And so one of the things that I think is pretty cool about American Promise and the work that all of you are advancing together is that it sort of invites you to dream a little bit. It invites you to imagine and to think about what our country could look like if our elected officials were actually working to execute the will of the people to advance people's interests instead of moneyed interests and financial interests. It invites you to think about what our country would look like if elected officials could spend all their time representing us and studying issues and developing relationships and advancing sound policy instead of sort of being fundraisers who govern on the side a little bit when they get around to it. It allows us to think about an America in which we value our government. Americans trust our government, respect it, and understand what an important, vital role it has in the life of our nation. And circling back to our mission at NationsWell, it invites us to think about what life would look like if our government, with all of its breadth, resources, reach, influence, could fully mobilize behind what is already working in this country, what's good about us, what's driving impact in the communities in which we're from. And what if it could mobilize to help accelerate that instead of being impeded by special interests? And so I remain incredibly inspired by the vision and the mission, convinced of its necessity, of its urgency, and I'm very happy and energized to do the work alongside you. So thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion to follow. Thank you. This is going to be fun. We're in conversation with some terrific, energetic, inspiring, service-minded leaders here. And so we'll have a chance to hear from them, learn about what moves them and what they're doing to make our country better. So Leslie, I'd love to start with you.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about your work and why it's so important to you personally. What's the personal connection that drives you and gets you up from bed every day and motivated to keep moving?
So I'm going to answer that with a story about my personal background. I was born and raised in Colorado, and my parents are farmers in eastern Colorado, and that's the part of Colorado that looks like Kansas. It doesn't have the beautiful mountains, but it has the beautiful plains, and my parents are corn and wheat farmers out there. And in eastern Colorado, there is a local government structure where the same person can serve as county commissioner and essentially judicial appellant and essentially county executive. And it's an interesting structure that they have at the local level out there. And recently in Colorado, over the last 7 or 8 years, there has been a real move toward gas infrastructure. In Colorado, there's been a hydrofracking move. And so across the road from my dad's farm is now a very deep hydrofracking well that lights up like a football field at night. And my father, who has 1,000 acres of corn and wheat, is concerned about this. And he wants to see some regulations put in place so that it's not affecting his wheat production. But he can't make a move because the same person holds the executive, the legislative, and the judicial office in the county. And obviously, there's a lot of lobbying money that is coming into that county. You can imagine that this results in a system in which the individual people have very, very limited power. And so what we at Trailblazers PAC do is try to get politics out of the back room onto the front porch. We try to make voters the most important people in our democratic republic again. And the way we do that is we ask candidates for local office not to wait for the laws to change. We absolutely support the idea of new laws that would influence the money in politics, but we ask candidates to take action now and choose to fund their campaigns through their actual voters. And that creates voter buy-in. And it creates more powerful campaigns because $1 from a voter is worth more than 100 cents in a campaign. And so that's what we do at Trailblazers PAC, is we are out there on the front lines supporting candidates for local office all across the country who are making that change in their individual communities.
Thank you so much. Can you say a quick word on sort of why this for you? Kind of what moves you personally about doing that work?
I get up every day and I'm optimistic, and it's a pretty depressing time in politics, so that's saying something. And I'm optimistic because I'm working with trailblazers. And I know that we have endorsed 55 candidates. We have over 350 candidates who've been in our mentorship pipeline. And around each and every one of those candidates is a community of voters who now demand and expect honest government. And knowing that our whole country may be moving into a dark place, but let me tell you, Pittsford, New York is going to be okay. And Newton, Massachusetts is going to be okay. And Lakewood, Ohio is going to be okay because they have a trailblazer there. That keeps me going. That gets me fired up.
That's terrific. So moving down. Hi, it's good to be with you. You're doing important community-based work, and it's about educating, mobilizing, forming, supporting voters. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, but it also strikes me that there's such a range of challenges that you might have, with all your talents and energy, may have wanted to give your time to. And so why did you focus, sort of similar question, kind of what moves you about the challenge you're focused on, and please tell us more about the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. So again, good afternoon. I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of this panel. I am the executive director of a nonpartisan, nonprofit in Massachusetts, statewide organization that operates really on 3 pillars. We educate, we get people to participate, and then we activate them. And so much similarity in what's happening here at American Promise. I do many things, right? Like our organization, we run a youth program. We're training up the next generation of leadership. We have to be cognizant of that. We have to continue to do that. I work for election modernization, help to bring about laws to make it more accessible for everyone to participate. We help to pass early voting in Massachusetts, online voter registration. We pass pre-registration, which allows 16 and 17-year-olds to get involved in the process a lot earlier. Statistics show the earlier they get involved, the more they stick with it. And so we encourage everyone to bring their young people to the polls with them, even before they can vote. But our biggest project is Democracy for All. And with that project, Mass Vote regrants money to base building organizations, and we provide technical assistance on grassroots organizing, teaching them how to door knock, with the right messages, how to phone bank. We provide them with tools like candidate guides, trying to educate people. Our goal at Mass Vote is to increase voter participation and civic engagement. We want more people voting, but we don't want them just voting to be voting. We want them to be informed voters. We provide candidate guides and conduct forums, not just for candidates, but also for ballot questions. Oftentimes I hear people say they don't particularly like the candidates, things of that nature. I figured either the candidates or a ballot initiative. Either way, we need to get people to the polls, right? Our Democracy for All is working with grassroots base building organizations and providing them and supporting them and helping them to do that work. I'm really fortunate this year that I was appointed to a landmark commission in Massachusetts. It's the Citizens Commission to study money and politics, along with Jeff. So I'm excited. The one common denominator here is Jeff. Did you notice that? So it's really exciting. But our missions are so aligned in the work that we do. I'm really excited to look out here in the audience and see all these citizens that come from different walks of life, right, across all party lines, that are getting involved in an issue that we all care about, an issue we believe that will unite us. I joined because I believe that this organization is really working to put the power back into the people's hands, help us and teach us to govern ourselves. We can do this, right? Not only is it on, I think it's doable. I am looking at, I believe the framework is already in place. They've done a great job just handpicking people in different places from different walks of life, right, to do this work. And so it's doable because I'm looking at the infrastructure that they've already put in place. We do this work on a statewide basis, and I see this happening on a national basis to really pull all these folks in, grassroots, regular folks that just care, and to do this work. I know, as well as you, that the 28th Amendment will be a fresh start for a more inclusive democracy.
Thank you. All right, Matt. So, as I understand it, you had a distinguished career in the Navy. You were spent a lot of time in submarines. You have a wife with a full-time demanding job as a physician. You have 2 kids, 3 and 1. I can think of at least a dozen reasons why you would not want to run for political office.
You sound like my wife.
I hope she doesn't have as deep a voice. But tell me why you did. What moved you to want to step up and run?
Yep, absolutely. So my formative years were spent in the Navy, went through the Naval Academy, and then served on a submarine. And from my perspective, our country made an investment in me through top-tier education, and then I made an investment back to our country through my service afterwards, as did a lot of my friends and other veterans who I served with. And so fundamentally, I think when you do that, when you make an investment in something, you want to see it succeed. And there are some very fundamental challenges going on in our country where that's not the case. A little more specifically, on a submarine, it's hard to describe for those who haven't been on one before, but there is this visceral sense that everybody's in it together. And your background doesn't matter, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you came from a wealthy background or a very poor rural area, you are truly all in it together. Your fates are intimately intertwined. If something goes wrong, you're all going to share the same fate. And if there's a problem on board, you all come together very quickly, collectively put your brain power to fix it. Because again, everybody wants to come home safely to their families. As I started looking around in our current political environment, that seemed to be completely lacking. And in my mind, we had devolved into this zero-sum, winner-take-all, frankly, Darwinian mindset, where in order for me to win, you have to lose, and vice versa. And that is just so fundamentally antithetical to what we were trained on during my time at the Naval Academy and my time in the Navy. So decided that I wanted to get involved and try to make a difference. And as I examined it a little bit further and really thought through it, I don't think anybody gets into the political arena thinking, I really want to be put in compromising situations, and I really hope I can get bought and sold by this corporation or that union. I think most people go into it with a genuine desire for honest service. And I think it's the structural system that doesn't allow that. And I can speak from my own experience in running a campaign where you spend much greater than 90% of your time on the phone fundraising, asking for money. And a lot of people are altruistic and want to see you succeed, but some people have an agenda. And so, people give money for different reasons, but I think limiting the influence of money in politics is one of the huge issues for me, along with gerrymandering. Both of those, I think if we can solve those, give the voice back to the individual voters, give the voice back to the people, that is where good governance will eventually prevail. So that's what I told my wife almost every night, and that's how I was able to run. Yeah.
That's great, Matt. Yeah. Well, boy, I'd love to ask you, a similar question. You're working at American Promise, helping to lead the organization, helping to lead the movement. What inspires you about this effort?
Yeah, that's a really great question. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm so honored to be on the stage with such incredible leaders. Thank you, Matt, for being one of the first signers of the American Promise Candidate Pledge, which is really incredible for this election cycle. But to answer your question, Greg, this work is super inspiring to me because I feel like all of the opportunities that have been granted to me as a young person, as a woman of color, can be traced back to the passage of amendments. From granting me the right to vote for the first time. That was an amendment when I was just 18 years old, voting for President Barack Obama. to now, I'm here on this stage and able to speak to why this is so important to me. In college, I helped to found an organization at UConn called the National Council for Negro Women. It's a national organization started by Mary McLeod, who was one of the founders of the NAACP and was really a champion for marrying education and social justice and community-based work. And so when I graduated college, I was looking to kind of continue that work of service, and American Promise kind of popped up on Indeed, as it does, as you're looking for ways to pay off your student debt. And I met the team, and of course, I think the common denominator here is Jeff, of course. But really, learning in college about how political inequality is so deeply rooted in so many different structures of our government and kind of can be traced back to this inequality of wealth and power and how that plays out in our political system. Those are all issues that really mean a lot to me, and when I peel back the layers of all of the different issues that I care about, big money in politics seems to be the foundation. So being at American Promise, it feels like I'm actually able to get my hands dirty on how to fix these issues. So when I started, I was a citizen empowerment coordinator. And basically that job is a really fancy title for national grassroots organizer, where I help to start chapters of our organization all across the country. I can see a couple of my incredible citizen leaders out in the audience. Raise your hand if you're a part of an APA. Yes, I see a couple out there. But yeah, able to start a couple chapters of our organization. You talked, Cheryl, about the commission in Massachusetts. I was able to help organize that campaign in Massachusetts where over 130,000 people all over the state signed a ballot initiative, old-fashioned democracy, to put a commission in place so that people could study the effects of money in politics and make recommendations directly to Congress on how to fix these problems. So being at AP, I've been able to just really take my fervor for wanting to make the world better and really put it into action-based, sustainable plans, which has been really incredible. So thank you so much for having me here, and I'm so happy to be here at the 3rd NCLC.
All right. So I can imagine, when these reforms are enacted, I could imagine us all sort of looking back and hearing things like, someone throwing their hat in the ring to run for office spent 90% of their time fundraising, and everyone just thinking like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. The world that we sort of dare to envision is sort of seems kind of like normal. It seems like to make a lot of common sense, but. No doubt there's a lot of work between here and there, and it'll be uphill, and I'm sure during some days it seems hard. And so kind of when you have those kind of days and there's a lot of bad news and you're frustrated by what you're seeing, what keeps you all going?
Well, I work exclusively with hyper-local candidates, so we work only with county level and municipal candidates. And I will say there's an incredibly important election coming up in 16 days. And it is very, very hard to get attention to that election when every single news outlet is reporting 24/7 on the election that is in a year and 16 days. And so that makes it tough. But what gets me excited is talking with the candidates who are running and hearing from them about how they plan to make change immediately, starting right now in 2019, and how they plan to hit the ground running. And they're so excited and engaged and energized. We live in a time when politics is getting closer and closer to voters because we have this 24/7 news cycle. We have the social media outlets that allow us to connect with each other across county lines, state lines, across the country. And we're using that to talk with each other in a way that I think our framers expected that we would, because I don't think they envisioned that the country would someday be 50 states and a whole continent large. They experienced that. They gathered together in pubs and meeting halls and debated these issues and really grappled with them. And we're able to do that again in a way that I think wasn't possible for about a century in our country. And so when I see people at the hyper-local level really wrestling that down and putting it to work for themselves in their communities, that's pretty exciting.
Terrific. So I think we just have a few short minutes, but maybe we could give everyone just sort of a chance to answer that question in reverse order. So, Wambui, if you're willing, starting with you, kind of what keeps you going during the hard days, and what might your sort of, closing words or rallying cries sound like to this group?
Yeah, it feels like almost every day so far this year has been a hard day. If you look at the news, in our office we often have some news station playing and breaking news. Like you said, Deborah, it's more like breaking my heart news. So I think what brings me back and what makes me super excited to show up and to do this work are the citizen leaders, are the people that are here. There's incredible local, really thoughtful, community-based work being done all over the country, and I have the real pleasure of seeing it from a bird's eye view, being a part of AP. Some of the groups that I helped to start have passed local resolutions in their towns calling for this amendment. I've seen groups hold incredible town hall meetings where they've brought together Republicans and Democrats and independents to talk about this issue of money in politics. I've seen groups organize small panel discussions where they watch a documentary like Dark Money and really see the impact of where our political system is and feel really riled up about it. And just seeing how passionate people are to get their hands dirty and to do something. What excuse do I have to feel bad about where we're at if other people are able to do the work? So that's what keeps me going.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm very fortunate in that I had a mother who was a role model who just has an uncanny ability to make really difficult things happen, never stops going, is one of the toughest people I know. And so I think it's one of those situations where it's not supposed to be easy. If it was easy, it wouldn't be worth pursuing. And so, if just to put your head down and keep putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually it'll break through, it'll happen.
Thanks, Matt.
What keeps me going? I think, first of all, I'm a community activist. That's my real role. And what keeps me going is the opportunity to raise the next generation of leadership. My young people really, really keep me going. The aha moments that they have. Working in the community, we're constantly trying to build power, helping people from on the ground understand the power that they hold. And when they come together and we pass legislation, when we're able to just do the work, that just keeps me going every day, because every day somebody has a question about how to get through this, and they call Mass Vote. And we want to be the go-to-it organization in Massachusetts. So I'm excited every day.
It was a great pleasure to be in conversation with all of you guys, inspiring to learn more about your work and your passion for all these issues. So please join me in giving the panelists a round of applause.